Welcome back. Glad to have you here. The galaxy believed survival could be reduced to a biological equation until one sleeping human opened his eyes and treated the impossible like an inconvenient morning. Here's how it happened. Director Sael Ver watched the human heart stop for the fourth time. A blue pulse crossed the observation wall of the Xenobiology Bureau, marking the final electrical contraction inside Commander Elias Mercer's chest. The rhythm flattened. Neural activity fell below measurable thresholds. Blood temperature dropped to 4 degrees above freezing, then lower still. Around Sael, 47 xenobiologists remained perfectly silent. The cryogenic chamber stood in the center of Laboratory 9, surrounded by white sensor towers and articulated surgical machines. Frost obscured most of its transparent lid. Only the outline of the human inside remained visible. Broad shoulders, dark hair, one hand resting against the restraint across his abdomen. Chief researcher Tovan Kell examined the data through 3 separate optical membranes. His species, the Vadran, had evolved beneath the pressure of a massive ocean world. His skin was translucent gray, and 6 flexible breathing folds opened and closed along his neck whenever he was anxious. All cardiac function has ceased, he said. Cerebral metabolism is declining beyond the predicted threshold. Sael did not look away from the chamber. Is the suspension field stable? Perfectly stable, Tovan replied. The human tissue is not. On the wall behind them, a model of Mercer's body turned slowly in the air. Entire organ systems flashed amber. The liver was entering cellular shock. Microfractures were forming in the capillaries of the lungs. Ice crystals had appeared within the fluid surrounding the spinal cord, despite the presence of human cryoprotectants. The Bureau's conclusion had been correct. Humans could not survive cryosleep. Sael folded his 4 hands behind his back as the heart monitor emitted one final tone. "Mark the official time of biological failure," he said. Tovan hesitated. "Director, the human protocol requires 12 minutes of observation after cardiac cessation. The protocol was written by humans." "Yes." "And the human government agreed that Bureau procedure would supersede it during this examination." Tovan lowered his head. "Then the official time is 0417 Station Standard." The declaration passed instantly through the laboratory network. Subject H-01 had expired. Across the Xenobiology Bureau's central station, 6,000 researchers received the result. Within moments, automated reports began transmitting toward the Interstellar Transit Authority, the Council of Species, and the diplomatic ministries of 312 inhabited systems. Humanity's application for cryogenic travel would be denied. It was not punishment, it was not prejudice. To Sael Ver, it was simply biology. For 11,000 years, the Xenobiology Bureau had studied the limits of living tissue. It had tested 620 intelligent species, cataloged more than 2 million cellular adaptations, and established the survival requirements for every major form of faster-than-light transportation. Cryosleep was not sleep in the ordinary sense. It was controlled death held at the threshold of permanence. Most species could not endure it. The Karai entered organ failure after 14 hours. The luminous Thesan lost their stored memories after 3 days. The insectile Orun survived physically, but their collective neural bonds dissolved, leaving each individual isolated and insane. Only 9 species had evolved the biochemical stability required to withstand deep suspension. Those 9 species had built the first interstellar empires. The ability to cross centuries without aging had determined galactic power long before humanity discovered radio. Cryogenic fleets could travel through unstable regions where faster-than-light drives failed. Cryogenic colonists could cross voids between galactic arms. Cryogenic soldiers could wait beneath dead worlds for generations and awaken when needed. Species that could endure suspension expanded. Species that could not remained close to home. Humanity had requested certification 13 years after entering the wider galactic community. Their diplomats claimed they had already used primitive cryogenic techniques on unmanned biological specimens and believed adult human survival was possible. The Bureau had reviewed their research. It had found optimism masquerading as evidence. Human cells were full of water. Their circulatory systems depended on narrow pressure tolerances. Their brains required constant oxygen, glucose, electrical exchange, and chemical equilibrium. Their immune systems reacted violently to damaged tissue. Their hearts were muscular pumps that deteriorated quickly when deprived of motion. Worse, human evolution had occurred on a world of constant competition. Their bodies did not surrender gently to cold. They fought it. Blood vessels constricted, muscles shivered, metabolism accelerated. Hormones flooded the body in an attempt to preserve heat. Every natural human response resisted the transition cryosleep required. Sale had explained this to the human delegation before the test began. Ambassador Layla Okafor had listened without interruption. She had been seated across from him in the Bureau's Hall of Biological Law, her silver diplomatic uniform bearing the small blue emblem of Earth. "You are describing the body's refusal to die," she had said. Sale had considered the wording unnecessarily dramatic. "I am describing a maladaptive thermal response." "Humans sometimes use different words for the same thing," Ambassador Okafor had replied. The Bureau offered computer simulations instead of a live trial. Humanity refused. It offered animal testing under Bureau supervision. Humanity submitted records showing that it had already performed such tests. Then Commander Elias Mercer volunteered. He was 42 years old, a veteran of the Solar Exploration Corps, and a physician trained in emergency medicine. He had flown rescue missions through the radiation storms of Jupiter, survived a decompression event above Mars, and spent 190 days commanding an expedition beneath the methane ice of Titan. His medical profile was excellent. That had made his death scientifically valuable. Sale turned away from the chamber. "Begin tissue preservation. The human delegation may request the remains after examination." Tovin's breathing folds opened sharply. "Director." Sale stopped. A pulse moved across the heart monitor. It was weak enough to be mistaken for electrical interference. Then another followed. The laboratory became still. Tovin enlarged the display. A jagged line rose, fell, and rose again. "Residual muscular discharge," Sale said. The neural monitor flashed. A cluster of electrical activity appeared deep inside Mercer's brainstem. Then the human's heart contracted. Not cleanly, not rhythmically. It twisted once inside his chest, paused, and struck again with enough force to push a thin wave of blood into the frozen vessels surrounding it. The observation wall changed from blue to red. Resuscitation activity detected. Tovan moved toward the control platform. "No one initiated resuscitation," he said. The chamber's internal systems came alive one after another. Heating elements activated at 7% capacity. Pumps began circulating cryoprotectant away from the kidneys. A narrow tube adjusted inside Mercer's airway. Sale stared at the controls. "Who authorized the reversal cycle?" "No one," Tovin replied. "The chamber is not running a reversal cycle." The human heart contracted a third time, then a fourth. The rhythm was slow, irregular, and biologically impossible. Mercer's body had been below the minimum recoverable metabolic threshold for 6 minutes, yet something inside it had restarted. In the diplomatic observation gallery 2 levels above, Ambassador Layla Okafor saw the laboratory lights turn red. She was already moving before the bureau attendant finished speaking. The attendant extended 2 narrow arms across the exit. "The experiment has concluded, Ambassador. You are required to remain here until the director provides a formal report." Layla looked through the transparent floor toward the chamber below. "His heart is beating." The attendant's pupils contracted. "The data display has not yet been verified." "I am a physician," Layla said. "I know what a heartbeat looks like." She stepped around him. When he tried to block her again, Captain Mara Vance of the Solar Exploration Corps rose from the rear of the gallery. Captain Vance was shorter than Layla, but she carried herself with the stillness of someone accustomed to being obeyed in emergencies. She had commanded Mercer for 6 years aboard the exploration vessel Horizon's Wake. "Move," she said. The attendant studied the 2 humans. "This area is under Bureau authority." "So is the body in that chamber," Layla replied, "until he wakes. Then it belongs to him." Below, alarms spread through Laboratory 9. Mercer's temperature rose by less than half a degree, but his cells responded as if heat had returned in full. Proteins unfolded and repaired themselves. Damaged membranes began expelling crystalline fragments. His liver released a surge of glucose. His adrenal glands flooded his bloodstream with compounds the Bureau had not expected to remain functional. The human body was not recovering through the chamber, it was recovering despite it. Toven opened a medical channel. "Prepare external circulatory support." "No," Sael said. Toven turned. "Director? Observe." The researcher's breathing folds trembled. "The subject may be experiencing extreme distress." "The subject was declared dead," Sael replied. "If we interfere now, we destroy the value of the result." Toven looked toward Mercer. The human's fingers moved. It was a tiny motion, no more than the curling of two fingertips against the restraint. But every scientist in the laboratory saw it. A technician whispered that voluntary muscular control should not return before cortical function. Another replied that cortical function had not returned. Then Mercer inhaled. The breath came violently. His chest rose against the restraint, pulling cold air through the tube in his throat. His back arched. The chamber shook beneath the sudden contraction of every major muscle group in his body. The neural display exploded with light. Memory centers activated. Sensory regions ignited. The motor cortex produced a storm of signals powerful enough to overwhelm 3 sensors. Toven abandoned restraint. "Open the chamber," he ordered. Sael stepped toward him. "I did not authorize that. The human is alive." The statement passed through the laboratory like a physical force. No one in the Xenobiology Bureau used the word alive carelessly. Life was the Bureau's jurisdiction, its doctrine, and its highest measurable law. Toven entered the emergency release sequence. The chamber resisted. Warning symbols appeared across the controls. Internal temperature differential exceeds safe limit. Sael studied the readings. Mercer's core remained dangerously cold. Exposure to the warm laboratory air could trigger cardiac collapse. "Do not open it," he said. "Begin controlled warming." The chamber's thermal systems increased gradually. Mercer's eyes opened. They were unfocused at first. His pupils reacted slowly to the light beneath the frosted lid. He blinked once, then again, and turned his head toward the figures beyond the glass. Toven leaned close to the communication panel. "Commander Mercer, can you hear me?" The human's lips moved around the airway tube. Toven increased the audio sensitivity. A dry, broken sound emerged from the chamber. "Remove it," Mercer said. The laboratory scientists stared at one another. Sael approached the glass. "Commander Mercer, your biological systems have experienced severe thermal trauma. You must remain still." Mercer looked directly at him. "Remove the tube," he repeated. Layla and Mara entered the laboratory as Toven began the extraction process. 2 Bureau attendants followed, protesting in rapid Vadran speech. Sael silenced them with a gesture. Whatever authority remained in the room had become irrelevant the moment a dead human issued a medical instruction. The airway tube withdrew. Mercer coughed. Vapor rolled from his mouth. His breathing was shallow but controlled. Layla reached the chamber. "Elias," she said, "stay still. You are at the Bureau." The trial ended early. Mercer closed his eyes briefly. "How early?" "You entered suspension 9 hours ago." His forehead tightened. That was not the question. Layla understood. "You were scheduled for 60 days. Mercer absorbed the answer without visible panic. He tested the movement of his hands, then his feet. The muscles responded slowly. "Why did you reverse the cycle?" he asked. "No one did," Toven said. Mercer looked toward him. "Then why am I awake?" Sael answered with the precision expected of a director. "Your cardiac and neurological functions ceased. The Bureau declared biological failure. 6 minutes later, your heart resumed activity without external intervention." Mercer stared at him. "You declared me dead?" "According to every recognized standard." Mercer considered this. Then he nodded once. "That explains why I feel terrible." Mara laughed. It was a single sharp sound, born from 9 hours of restrained fear. Several alien researchers recoiled. Laughter did not belong in a laboratory where death had just been certified and overturned. Mercer turned his head toward Mara. "Captain." "Good morning, Commander. Is it morning?" "Station time says yes." He swallowed. "Then I need coffee." No one moved. Mercer looked from Mara to Layla. "Coffee," he repeated. "Black, 2 sugars." Tovan's breathing folds opened fully. Your organs are in a state of severe metabolic instability. That is why I need the sugar. Caffeine may increase cardiac stress, Tovan said. Mercer examined the frost above his chest. I have already been dead once today. I am willing to accept the risk. Layla placed one hand against the chamber. Elias, let them examine you first. He shifted his gaze toward her. Ambassador, with respect, if 47 xenobiologists just watched me restart my own heart, they can examine me while I drink coffee. For the first time in his 160 years of scientific service, Director Sale Vare did not know what procedure applied. Back on Earth, the Bureau's transmission reached the Solar Exploration Council at 11:22 Coordinated Time. The message contained no announcement of Mercer's recovery. It reported only biological failure. In the Council's subterranean operations chamber beneath Geneva Crater on Luna, 12 officials watched the words appear across the central display. Human cryogenic certification rejected. Subject deceased during evaluation. Chief Medical Engineer Dr. Priya Nwosu did not react outwardly. She read the message twice, then opened a private channel to the Horizon's wake. No response came. The vessel remained docked at the Bureau station, 340 light-years away. Entangled communication allowed instantaneous text exchange, but the Bureau controlled all outbound transmissions from the laboratory sector. Council Chair Anton Rhee stood at the head of the table. We knew this was possible, he said. Priya looked at him. Possible is not the same as acceptable. Mercer understood the risk. He understood the model, she replied. The Bureau changed 3 elements of our suspension protocol. Rhee's expression hardened. They were permitted to establish test conditions. They increased the cooling rate, reduced the concentration of the membrane stabilizer, and disabled the automated adrenal trigger, because they considered those elements artificial supports. Priya enlarged the technical appendix. They wanted to know whether humans could biologically survive cryosleep. We wanted to prove that human technology could make cryosleep survivable. Those are not the same experiment. A second transmission arrived. It carried a priority seal from Ambassador Okafor. Subject alive. The room froze. Priya opened the message. 4 words followed. Awake. Conscious. Requesting coffee. Rhee read the line twice. Is that a code? Priya's face changed. The tension did not disappear. It transformed into astonished recognition. No, she said. That is Elias. On the Bureau station, Commander Mercer sat upright in the open chamber while 7 medical machines examined him. A thermal blanket covered his shoulders. Sensor patches ran across his chest, throat, and temples. His skin remained pale, and his hands trembled whenever he lifted them, but his heart had stabilized at 58 beats per minute. The coffee arrived in a laboratory-safe vessel designed for Vadran nutrient solutions. Mercer inspected the pale brown liquid. What is this? The station attendant bowed. A preparation made from the roasted seed material aboard your vessel. Mara smelled it. They boiled it for 11 minutes. Mercer looked offended. Tovan watched the exchange with increasing confusion. Is the substance medically necessary? Not strictly, Layla said. Then why is he refusing it? Because it has been murdered. The Vadran researcher glanced toward the chamber where Mercer had recently been declared dead. I do not understand the distinction. Neither do most people before their first cup, Mara said. Mercer swung his legs over the side of the chamber. Every medical machine sounded an alarm. Tovan moved forward. You cannot stand. Mercer placed both feet on the floor. His knees shook. Layla reached for him, but he lifted one hand. Give me a moment. His body had lost less than a full day, yet the sensation resembled months of illness. His muscles received commands through nerves still struggling to restore normal conduction. The floor felt distant beneath his bare feet. Light pressed painfully against his eyes. He stood anyway. For 3 seconds his balance held. Then his left leg folded. Mara caught his shoulder. Tovan supported him from the other side with 2 arms. Mercer breathed through the pain. That could have gone better. Your nervous system has not completed recovery, Tovan said. Then we should give it something useful to do. Mercer looked across the laboratory. "Where is the Horizon's Wake galley?" "Docking arm 12, Mara replied. "How far?" 600 meters. Tovan made a low aquatic sound of disbelief. "Commander Mercer, your heart stopped less than 30 minutes ago." "Yes. Your body temperature remains 7 degrees below normal. I noticed. You are not capable of walking 600 meters. Mercer tightened the blanket around his shoulders. "Then you may record the first step of an unsuccessful attempt." Sael had spent his life studying biological adaptation. He understood instinct, conditioning, and survival behavior across thousands of evolutionary branches. He did not understand what he was witnessing. The human had no reason to stand. No predator threatened him. No dependent required protection. No immediate danger demanded movement. Every biological signal should have compelled rest. Yet Mercer remained upright because he had decided to obtain a heated beverage. Sael approached him. "Why?" Mercer's eyes settled on the director. "Why what? Why are you attempting this?" "Because I want coffee." That answer is insufficient. It is the complete answer. Sael's lower hands tightened. "Your species submitted this trial to establish fitness for cryogenic travel. You failed. Your survival appears to be an unexplained anomaly, and your current behavior increases the risk of permanent injury." Mercer studied him for a long moment. "Director, when I volunteered for this test, I expected to wake after 60 days. I expected weakness, confusion, pain, and probably a room full of concerned scientists telling me not to move. Your expectations do not explain your actions." "They do to me." Mercer stepped forward. His legs trembled, but they held. "When a human wakes in an unfamiliar place after something has gone wrong," he said, "the first useful action is often a small one. You sit up, you find your clothes, you make something warm. You remind your body that the day has started and that it still belongs to you." Sael watched him take another step. "Coffee is not treatment," Mercer continued. "It is proof of routine. Routine is proof of control. And after being informed that I died, I would appreciate something ordinary." The director looked toward the scientists surrounding them. Every sensor remained linked to Mercer. The entire laboratory moved when he moved, rolling machines and floating monitors forming a silent procession behind him. Sael could have ordered security to stop him. Instead, he said, "Record all parameters." The walk from Laboratory 9 to Docking Arm 12 became the most observed journey in the Bureau's history. Mercer moved slowly. Mara remained at his left side and Tovan at his right. Layla followed with Sael and 12 researchers. Medical drones hovered around them, projecting constant readings onto the corridor walls. After 20 meters, Mercer's heart accelerated. After 50, his body temperature rose by nearly 1 degree. After 90, the tremor in his hands diminished. The station's inhabitants began gathering along the route. Vadran researchers emerged from laboratories. Tall Oris diplomats paused beneath archways. A cluster of crystalline Thesan pressed against a viewing partition, their bodies shimmering with emotional color. All had received the Bureau alert. The human had died. Now the human was walking through the station in a thermal blanket, searching for coffee. Tovan studied the metabolic display. "Your glucose consumption is extreme." Mercer kept moving. "Expected. Your damaged muscle fibers are releasing inflammatory signals." Also expected. "Your cardiovascular output has increased by 40%. That is the point." Tovan turned one translucent eye toward Layla. "Is he always like this?" "No," Layla replied. "Usually he is more difficult." Mercer reached the first intersection and stopped. His breathing had become shallow. Sweat appeared along his forehead despite his low temperature. Mara touched his arm. "We can bring the coffee here." "No. You have made your point. I am not making a point." He looked down the corridor toward the distant docking arm. "I am making coffee." Sael stepped closer. "Commander, even if you reach your vessel, the act itself will prove nothing about cryogenic survivability. Your cellular damage remains substantial." Mercer nodded. "Then continue measuring." He walked on. By the time the procession passed the Bureau's central atrium, more than 800 observers had gathered across the balconies. The Bureau had been constructed to celebrate certainty. Its architecture reflected the principle that life could be classified, predicted, and governed through knowledge. Vast columns contained genetic archives from hundreds of worlds. Transparent bridges crossed gardens where extinct ecosystems had been recreated cell by cell. At the center of the atrium stood the 9 survivors, sculptures representing the 9 species certified for cryogenic travel. Mercer stopped beneath them. He looked upward at the figures carved from black stone. "Which one woke early?" he asked. Tovan followed his gaze. "None. Premature emergence is fatal once deep suspension has stabilized." Mercer breathed in slowly. "Then you need a 10th statue." Sael heard the words echoed by translation systems across the atrium. They did not sound boastful. That disturbed him more than arrogance would have. Mercer did not speak like a being claiming victory. He spoke like a physician stating a diagnosis. The procession continued. 300 meters from the laboratory, Mercer stumbled again. This time he fell to one knee. Medical drones descended. Tovan reached for a sedative injector. Mercer caught his wrist. "No. Your body is failing. My body is adapting. The distinction is not supported by the readings." Mercer looked at the data projected beside them. "Then look at the trend, not the moment." Tovan froze. The human's heart rate was elevated, but becoming more regular. Oxygen exchange in the lungs had improved. Neural conduction was accelerating. The kidneys, previously marked as unstable, had resumed near-normal filtration. Movement was causing additional stress. It was also restoring function. Human recovery did not proceed through preservation. It proceeded through controlled challenge. Tovan lowered the injector. Mercer stood. They reached docking arm 12, 53 minutes after leaving the laboratory. The Horizon's wake waited beyond the pressure shield, its silver hull stretching nearly 400 meters along the station exterior. It was not a warship. Its narrow frame carried scientific modules, survey drones, and a rotating habitation ring designed for missions beyond established routes. The airlock recognized Captain Vance and opened. Human gravity took hold inside. Mercer nearly collapsed beneath the change. Mara supported him. "We keep the ship at Earth standard," she said. Sael's legs adjusted automatically, but several Vadran scientists struggled. Earth gravity was almost twice that of their station environment. Mercer straightened. Home field advantage. The human crew had gathered in the receiving bay. 32 officers, engineers, and medical specialists stood in silence as Mercer entered. Some smiled. Others covered their mouths. Ship surgeon Dr. Nolan Reyes pushed through them with a medical scanner in one hand. "You were dead," Nolan said. "So I have been told. I reviewed the bureau data. Then you know I am busy." Nolan looked at the thermal blanket. Busy dying again? Busy making coffee. The crew parted. Mercer crossed the receiving bay, passed through the central corridor, and entered the galley. It was a practical room built for 20 people at a time, with fixed tables, magnetic utensils, and a food preparation wall covered in handwritten labels. The bureau delegation stopped at the entrance. Mercer approached a machine mounted beside the water recycler. Sael studied it. "This device prepares the substance?" Mara nodded. "It grinds the beans immediately before extraction." The director looked toward the station attendant's abandoned container. "That is why the earlier preparation was unacceptable." Among other crimes, Mercer opened a storage compartment and removed a sealed packet. His fingers still shook as he poured dark beans into the grinder. The machine activated with a harsh mechanical sound. 3 alien scientists stepped backward. Mercer leaned against the counter while the grinder worked. The smell spread through the galley. Bitter, warm, earthy, and entirely unlike the sterile atmosphere of the bureau. He measured water. He inserted a filter. He transferred the grounds with slow precision. No one helped him. Layla understood why. This was no longer about the beverage. Assistance would have changed the meaning of the act. Mercer needed to complete each step himself, not for the bureau, but for the part of his mind still trapped beneath the frost. He pressed the activation control. Hot water flowed. Coffee gathered in the glass vessel below, dark and steaming. Tovan monitored Mercer's neural activity. "Something is changing." Sael looked at the display. The human stress markers were declining. That is impossible, Tovan said. The stimulant has not entered his bloodstream. Mercer inhaled the aroma. Memory response, Layla explained. Association. He has done this thousands of times. A behavioral anchor, Sael said. A morning, Mara corrected. Mercer poured the coffee into a white ceramic cup bearing the faded emblem of the Solar Exploration Corps. He added 2 portions of sugar and stirred. Then he lifted it. The cup rattled softly against the spoon. Every observer watched the steam rise past his face. Mercer took a sip. He closed his eyes. For 5 seconds, the galley was silent. Then he opened them and looked at Sael. Better. The moment traveled through the galaxy before the Bureau could contain it. A crew member had recorded Mercer's walk from the laboratory. Another had captured the scene in the galley. By station midday, the images had crossed hundreds of systems. The official report stated that a human subject had suffered complete cardiac cessation during cryogenic evaluation and had regained function through mechanisms not yet understood. The unofficial recording showed something far more powerful. It showed a dead man making coffee. Across the Council of Species, debate erupted. The 9 cryogenic powers demanded that humanity's application remain rejected until the anomaly could be replicated. Transit guilds feared the collapse of licensing systems that had controlled deep space expansion for thousands of years. Military observers focused on a more disturbing possibility. If humans could awaken without controlled reversal, then human cryogenic forces might operate under conditions fatal to every existing suspended army. The Bureau ordered silence while it investigated. Humanity did not remain silent. Dr. Priya Nwosu arrived at the station 4 days later aboard the medical vessel Continuance. She entered Laboratory 9, carrying 12 years of research and enough anger to make even Captain Vance step aside. Director Sael received her in the Hall of Biological Law. Mercer sat beside her, still pale, but walking without assistance. Tovan stood on the bureau side of the chamber. Priya placed a data core on the table. Your conclusion was wrong. Sael remained composed. Our conclusion was based on direct observation. You concluded that humans could not survive cryosleep because Commander Mercer died. His biological functions ceased, yes. Priya leaned forward. You assumed death was the end of the process. Tovan's breathing folds opened. That is the accepted definition. For your biology. Sael activated the chamber record. Commander Mercer suffered catastrophic cellular disruption and recovered from it. His recovery remains unexplained. No, Priya said. It remains unexplained to you. She opened the data core. Human cryosleep research filled the air between them. The Bureau had focused on preventing cellular damage. Human scientists had pursued a different strategy. They knew perfect preservation was impossible with their biology. Instead, they had designed the body to survive imperfection. Nanoscopic repair proteins had been introduced into Mercer's bloodstream weeks before the test. Synthetic platelets reinforced weakened vessels. Engineered enzymes remained inactive during cooling, then awakened when cellular membranes began to rupture. A modified adrenal trigger monitored not the heartbeat, but the chemical conditions associated with irreversible decline. The Bureau had disabled the automated trigger in the chamber. It had not disabled the one inside Mercer. You placed machinery in his body, Sael said. Priya shook her head. We taught his body to manufacture the machinery. The director studied the molecular diagrams. These repair proteins are produced by modified marrow cells. Correct. Then the subject was biologically altered. Every certified species is biologically adapted to cryosleep, Priya replied. Your doctrine accepts adaptations produced by evolution but rejects adaptations produced by intelligence. Natural traits are stable. So are these. Natural traits represent the species. Priya glanced toward Mercer. He represents ours. Sael turned to the commander. Did you know your heart might stop? I knew the trigger would permit deeper metabolic collapse than Bureau standards considered safe. You expected death. Mercer considered the word. I expected a temporary loss of functions you define as life. The chamber grew quiet. Tovan stepped toward the human research model. The internal trigger did not activate when cardiac function ceased. No, Priya said. Why? Because the heart stopping was not the emergency. Tovan enlarged the chemical timeline. The trigger activated 6 minutes later, when membrane damage crossed a specific threshold. Correct. The Vedran researcher's eyes widened. Your system allowed the body to remain clinically dead because restarting it too early would have interrupted stabilization. Priya nodded. The Bureau tried to preserve Mercer at the edge of death, she said. His body survived by crossing that edge and coming back. Sael looked toward the 9 survivors carved into the distant wall. Each certified species endured cryosleep through stillness. Their organs slowed without stopping. Their cells resisted damage. Their biological systems entered equilibrium and remained there until external systems reversed the process. Humans had developed no such equilibrium. They broke, then they repaired. The Bureau had interpreted human fragility as disqualification. Humanity had turned fragility into a stage of the procedure. Sael faced Mercer again. Why did you wake early? Mercer looked toward Priya. She answered. The Bureau reduced the membrane stabilizer concentration by 18%. Damage accumulated sooner than our model predicted. The internal trigger determined that continued suspension would become unrecoverable and initiated emergency revival. It made an autonomous decision, Tovan said. Mercer's marrow, endocrine system, and neural implants made the decision together, Priya replied. The technology is distributed across his biology. There is no single device to fail. Sael studied the human commander. And the coffee? Mercer almost smiled. That was not part of the protocol. The Bureau repeated the test, not with Mercer. Human medical law prohibited a second deep suspension until he had completed 6 months of recovery. Instead, 12 volunteers arrived from Earth. They were scientists, soldiers, engineers, and civilians. Their ages ranged from 29 to 61. Each carried the same biological support architecture, adjusted for individual physiology. The Bureau tested them in chambers built according to human specifications. The first remained suspended for 10 days, the second for 40, the third for 180. Every subject experienced some degree of cellular damage. Every subject recovered. The 11th trial went further. Dr. Priya Nwosu entered suspension aboard an unpowered capsule and was launched beyond the station's protective field. For 2 years, the capsule drifted through radiation, magnetic turbulence, and temperature variations that would have destroyed the delicate equilibrium of the 9 survivors. When the capsule returned, the Bureau initiated no reversal sequence. Priya's body detected proximity to the station through an external signal. Her internal systems began repair. Her heart restarted after 8 minutes of complete cessation. She woke asking for water. Tovan gave it to her personally. The final trial changed the balance of the galaxy. Humanity proposed a voyage across the Orphean Expanse, a region of distorted space separating the settled systems from 8,000 unexplored stars. Faster-than-light drives could not operate inside it. Conventional travel would require 700 years. The cryogenic powers had attempted the crossing 3 times. Every expedition had failed. Humanity built the vessel Far Horizon. It carried 20,000 colonists, 900 crew members, and enough genetic archives to establish a permanent civilization. The ship was not sleek. It was a colossal framework of rotating habitats, fusion reactors, ice shields, fabrication bays, and cryogenic vaults. Director Sael Veer stood on the observation deck as it departed. He had personally signed humanity's certification. The document did not name humans as the 10th naturally cryogenic species. It created a new classification, adaptive resurrection travelers. Tovan disliked the phrase at first. Mercer found it accurate. The Far Horizon entered the expanse and disappeared from communication. 7 centuries passed. Humanity expanded across nearby systems using shorter cryogenic routes. Their vessels traveled through radiation storms, dark matter currents, and regions where power systems could not remain active. Human crews slept through disaster and woke when their own bodies decided survival required action. They did not replace the 9 cryogenic powers. They surpassed the limits those powers had accepted. Other species came to Earth seeking the same transformation. Human physicians helped them. They did not guard the process as an advantage. They adapted repair systems for Karai organs, stabilized Thesan memory structures, and created neural bridges that allowed the Orun collective to remain connected during suspension. Within 300 years, 26 additional species crossed the long dark between stars. The old empires feared that humanity had broken the hierarchy of distance. The new worlds remembered that humanity had opened it. Then, 711 years after its departure, the far horizon transmitted from the opposite side of the Orphean expanse. The message reached every inhabited system. The ship had survived. Its colonists had awakened around a blue-white star surrounded by 5 habitable worlds. Its engines were damaged. Its outer hull had lost nearly a third of its shielding. 2 cryogenic vaults had failed during the 7th century. But 19,600 colonists had opened their eyes. Among the first was a descendant of Elias Mercer's medical team, Commander Anika Reyes. She emerged from suspension before the scheduled revival because the ship had detected a cooling failure near the command vault. She crossed a frozen corridor, restarted the damaged reactor controls, and restored heat to thousands of chambers. Then she entered the far horizon's empty galley. The ship's cameras recorded her hands shaking as she filled the brewer. They recorded the first curl of steam rising beneath an alien sun. They recorded her lifting a white ceramic cup bearing the faded emblem of the Solar Exploration Corps. Across the galaxy, Sael Vaer watched the transmission from the same hall of biological law where humanity had once been denied. He was old even by Vadran standards. Tovan stood beside him, now serving as director of the Xenobiology Bureau. On the screen, Commander Anika Reyes took the first sip of coffee ever brewed beyond the Orphean expanse. Tovan's breathing folds opened in amusement. The preparation appears acceptable. Sael looked at the distant human standing among waking thousands. Yes, he said. This time they did not boil it for 11 minutes. The Xenobiology Bureau revised its oldest doctrine. Life could not always be measured by uninterrupted function. Survival did not always mean remaining whole. Sometimes survival meant breaking in a way that permitted repair. Sometimes it meant a heart falling silent in the dark, trusting that blood, memory, and will would find one another again. The first human cryosleep chamber was preserved in the Bureau's central atrium. It stood beneath the sculptures of the 9 survivors, its transparent lid still marked by the frost of Elias Mercer's failed examination. Beside it, the Bureau placed no statue. It placed a small coffee machine. Visitors from thousands of worlds came to see it. They read the record of the human whose heart stopped, whose cells fractured, and whose body rejected the certainty of the galaxy's finest scientists. They learned that he had awakened 51 days early. They learned that he had walked 600 meters while still colder than living flesh should be. They learned that, before demanding recognition, compensation, or triumph, he had performed one ordinary human ritual. He had made coffee. And beyond the edge of known space, beneath the light of a star no ancient empire had ever reached, steam rose from a human cup while 20,000 sleepers opened their eyes. The galaxy had believed cryosleep belonged to species born capable of enduring death. Humanity proved it belonged to those willing to return from it.